Bali's Mount Agung volcano has reached a critical stage with 500 tremors shaking the area a day, according to Indonesia's National Disaster Management Agency. Spokesman Sutopo Purwo Nugroho warned that molten rock known as magma was just 3 to 5 kilometers from the summit of the mountain in eastern Bali. Nyoman Kastawan has stayed inside the exclusion zone about 8 kilometers from the summit of Agung. Photo Fairfax. We cannot predict when it will erupt, but monitoring shows the potential to erupt is high, Mr. Sutopo said. No instrument can predict with precision when a volcano will erupt. He said 62,000 people had been living in the exclusion zone, but almost 50,000 evacuees had sought shelter in 301 camps in the area. But there were still people who refused to be evacuated because the mountain had not yet erupted and they worried about who would feed their animals. Nyoman Kastawan has remained in his village of Duku Pandan Sari Kubu, which is inside the exclusion zone and about 8 kilometers from the summit. He said about 40 women and children from his family had been evacuated to Denpasar, but he stayed behind to look after his cattle and pigs. I don't want to sell them while the price is so low, he said. People still refuse to be evacuated because the mountain has not yet erupted and they worry about who will feed their animals. Photo Yudi Karnadi. Around 30 males still live in my village, the able-bodied, so when there is something we can evacuate immediately. Some of the old men who stayed behind said the eruption is still a long way off. They survived the 1963 eruption so they don't want to evacuate now. It's still a few months away, they say. Mr. Sutopo warned that when Mount Agung last erupted in 1963, more than 1,500 people were killed and 1,700 houses destroyed. Nilu Lestari and Niputu Citra Agustini were still on Mount Agung, Bali on Monday. Photo Yudi Karnadi. The kind of eruption is explosive, spewing stones, lava and pyroclastic flows, a fast-moving current of hot gas and volcanic material, he said. Indonesia's President, Joko Widodo, would visit refugee camps on Tuesday. A family rests in a tent at an evacuee camp in Kelungkung, Bali, Indonesia, on Sunday. Photo app. Mount Agung is 71 kilometers from the tourist hotspot of Kuta. Mr. Sutopo said tourism was still normal and flights had not been affected. He said ash and thick smoke would not reach Bali's capital, Denpasar. The travel advisory only warned people not to venture within 9 kilometers southeast of Mount Agung and 12 kilometers north, northeast, south and northwest of the crater. Villagers sit in a temporary shelter in Bali, Indonesia, on Saturday. Photo app. Mr. Sutopo said contingency plans were in place if an eruption meant flights had to be rerouted to cities outside Bali. He said if the volcano erupted between September 25 and October, volcanic ash would fly northwest. If it erupted between November and January, the ashes would disperse to the east towards West NUSA Tenggara and East NUSA Tenggara. Villagers remained on Monday in the foothills of Mount Agung despite the increasing number of tremors. Photo Yudi Karnadi. The governor of Bali, Imade Mangku Pastika, has declared a state of emergency and will assist affected regions. Some 2 trillion rupiah has been allocated for the emergency situation, Mr. Sutopo said. Villages neighboring those that had been evacuated would provide shelter under a sister village model. Mr. Sutopo said he deeply regretted hoaxes, which suggested the volcano had already erupted, which he believed were circulated to increase traffic to websites. He urged the public to visit the official website for Mount Agung updates magma.vsi.esdm.go.id. Volcanologist Ray Caes warned the highest danger posed by an eruption would be pyroclastic flows, which were responsible for many of the deaths when Mount Agung last erupted in 1963. He said volcanic mud flows, which channel into major valleys, could bury entire villages. If the population hasn't been evacuated, there is a risk of a huge loss of life, Professor Caes, an emeritus professor at Monash University and the immediate past president of the International Association for Volcanology and Chemistry of the Earth's Interior, said. It is not just a preliminary eruption that poses enormous hazards and risks. He said Indonesia was one of the most volcanically active countries in the world and the Center for Volcanology had a lot of experience in monitoring these types of events. They are obviously taking it extremely seriously, because of such a high level of earthquake activity and such a long repose period since the last eruption. The 1963 eruption, which shot gas and ash up to 10 kilometers in the air, was ranked 5 on the Volcanic Explosivity Index, equivalent to the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens in Washington, which killed more than 50 people.